Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's VIN-dow with Robert Hollinshead. Bob, I called. I didn't expect an answer. I figured you'd be at NADA this week.
Well, I certainly was supposed to be there, Shawnee, but I'm playing hooky for a couple of reasons I don't need to go into. But no, I'm not going to be there. But it seems like they got a lot of things lined up there for this year. A lot of different things, solutions.
Looking like a big show. Lots of vendors.
Yeah. You say there's a lot of vendors there?
I remember going down a few years ago, and everyone would look at my, whatever you call them, Leonard or whatever, and if it said vendor, they were just like, I don't want to talk to you. If it said dealer, they were all over you. So I think the vendors
it's a social event
for dealers.
Yeah. It's a social event for dealers where they get to see people, this, that, and the other thing I haven't seen, used to know. I met that guy for the first time and all that. And of course, they're going to the thing and then golf something and then something else, right? Maybe shoot a couple of dice or something, right? But what you're saying is, I noticed it maybe 20 years ago when I first started doing this thing with technology, where you had to go for different things and meet this one and do all that type of thing. And the vendor thing, I've come to the conclusion that vendors all go there because that's the vast majority of people in that building, right? It's, in my opinion, it's 90-some% of the people sucking oxygen in those halls. It's a gargantuan. To me, it's just my perception. I'm not saying I'm right. It's a gargantuan job interview. Everybody's interviewing the other one because this place is no good, and that guy's no good. He's you got anything over there? And, then they all swap spit in terms of wherever they're working and what's wrong with the place, and it's no good. And it's these people are no good. They're all looking for a job. In other words, everybody there with a vendor card on, everybody's moving on to the next thing. And then when you look at the LinkedIn, it confirms it. It's 1 year here. It's 2 years there. It's 1 year, 6 months, 18 months, and jumping like from one to the other. And it's almost time doing the NADA convention. I shouldn't say that, but unfortunately, to me, it's a verified, statistically undeniable fact. You follow me? And, last week we talked about, I think it was last week, we talked about vendor or bidder fatigue. When you're trying to buy cars, you give everybody the respect. You get in the lane, you look at your things, you do your due diligence. You might even put proxy bids in. At least you put an alarm up to make sure you're there when the car comes through. And when it's all said and done, the car ain't getting sold. That's very frustrating, man. It's very, very frustrating for a buyer, especially if you're, missing 80 or 90 or 95% of the cars that you were anticipate buying, be a last bidder, and then get no sales. You know what I mean? It's the vendor. It's bidder fatigue, in my opinion. And I could be dead wrong about this. I see vendor fatigue for car dealers being a very similar thing. In other words, there's 8 million people out there, all experts, of course, trying to sell dealers things that may or may not be work. But when I look at and listen to the vendor, I get pitched things constantly, 2, 3, 8, 10 times a day. Somebody's got something and when you actually start to dig into it, either the founder or the person that's presenting, and you look at and you ask a few dealer centric or dealer specific or experiential questions, we go into brain freeze. In other words, brain freeze sets in. This is where, Warren Buffett's partner refers to, chauffeur knowledge. It's a really good thing for anybody that has the inclination to look that up. Chauffeur knowledge, like chauffeur of the car knowledge. And you'll see Max Planck, the physicist from the early 19th century, talking about his chauffeur that got so sick of listening to his speeches because they were going all over Germany and France and this place and Ukraine, somewhere to give the scientific speeches at the universities and so forth. The chauffeur asked Max if he could give the speech because he knows it so well just by listening to it. He's memorized it. Max says yes. Max sat down in the front seat with his chauffeur cap on. Chauffeur got up and acted like Max, the physicist, did a wonderful job delivering the speech, standing ovation, came to questions. And of course, like a genius physicist asked a question. The chauffeur did not know the answer. So he deferred to Max, sitting with the chauffeur cap in the front of the row. And he said, I'm surprised at this day and age that such an elementary question should be asked in this esteemed arena. I'll defer to my chauffeur to give the answer. Max stood up. The physicist stood up, answered perfectly, and it's then defined as chauffeur knowledge, someone who can repeat like a parrot things that they heard. Never were successful at, let's say, deploying their vendor, typically because they got sick of the hours at the dealership and they know something about something, but not to the point where you'd be able to impart knowledge that's useful to a dealer that has their life, skin in the game, life in the business that they're in, and have any relevance in terms of the syntax of what comes out of the mouth, where there really could be potentially significant knowledge to be gathered from the vendor. I'm not criticizing vendors. Vendors are great. Everybody has to have a job and all the rest of it. It's just the process of listening to, the vendor, the 80 million vendors that are all knocking on the door with the best thing, show you how to do your job. You've been doing it for 50 years, but they know how to do it better, and they know how to do it, but they've never done it before. But they've listened to somebody tell you how you're going to do it better. The fatigue that comes with that, it's almost like an automatic static button that has to get turned off, and you can't listen to it. It's very rare that you have someone selling something, like in a way that when you listen to it, it makes sense. You employ it, and it actually works the way it was intended to work. Because I find that the vast majority of things that are being vended, sold, if you actually sort through them to get to the DNA of what it is that they're supposed to resolve, it's pure and absolute bullshit. You follow me? In everybody's scramble to find new, better ways to do it for free, and AI fixes everything, and you don't need talent and all the rest of it, right? I think there's a continual possible little inclination to see and listen to something that might work, but it's just been my experience. And again, when I'm listening to people that have solutions for things, and you ask a couple, or you point out a couple, anybody would know as a buyer, a seller, a car dealer, anybody would, and they can't give you an answer. It pretty much crumbles the rest of it. To me, it just becomes noise, and you got to find a reason to get them out of the room. You know what I mean? The only reason we're bringing this topic up, Shawnee, is because it is, the week of the vendor. Everybody's in the NADA with bells and whistles and giving away, free pens and things, and showing them all the things that they got to it's going to change the world, and we're going to keep them relevant and all the rest of that, right? It's for no other reason. Just listen to what we're talking about and see if it doesn't match the reality. Vendor fatigue. You know what I mean?
I love the chauffeur term, and I just think the pitch line that always gets to me is like, yeah, you could just sell, it's only 2 more cars sold a month, and it'll pay for it. It's no big deal. And it's just like, okay, guys. I love that chauffeur knowledge.
But I love digging into who's delivering the message, Sean.
Yeah.
If you were so successful at what you were doing that you could actually tell a skin in the game guy how to do it, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? You see what I'm saying to you? How did you turn out of being a successful car person and into a vendor? It's just it's fascinating to me. You know what I mean? And there's a pile of them out there.
Yeah.
That whole there's whole giant convention centers full of them. And again, I'm not criticizing them. I'm just saying, as a dealer, just keep that vendor fatigue thing in the brain, just to be able to sort through the pedigree of the person selling you something. Would you hire them? And Where'd they get their knowledge from? Were they successful at what we do or not? It save you a little time and effort. You know what I mean?
Thank you, Bob.
You got it, guys and girls.